Miss Cornelia Scott is interested in the highest position of the Confederate daughters, the position of the regent. She does not go to attend the annual meeting of the Confederate daughters, pretending that she is suffering from laryngitis. Pretending that she is suffering from a throat infection, she does not go to attend the annual meeting of the Confederate daughters. As the election to different posts is going to be held that day, Cornelia Scott thinks that her absence will be more pointed. Her absence will have more effect. So she has an eye on the position of the regent, that is the highest position in the association, Confederate daughters. She has already held different positions in the association. This time she wants to become the regent, the highest position in the association. Even though she does not go to the meeting that day, she is very anxious to know about the proceedings in the meeting, what happens in the meeting. She is very eager to know about it. She has great tension also to know what is happening. Her intimate friend Esmeralda Hawkins calls her and tells what happens, what is going on right now. She says that the luncheon is over. We can see Miss Cornelia Scott making comments on the luncheon that they were served. She does not go to the meeting as a strategy. Actually, she makes it clear to her friend about what should be the strategy they have to adopt. She tells her that only if she is offered the position of the regent unanimously, by unanimous acclamation, she is going to accept it. She is not ready to contest for that post. If they offer that post unanimously, without opposing, without any election, then only she will accept it. That's her stand. She makes it clear to Esmeralda Hawkins. That's what I was telling you. So she says, I have served as treasurer for 3 terms. 3 times she has been the treasurer of the organization, twice as secretary, once as chaplain. She has held all these important positions in the association. And she says that the position of the chaplain, that was a very dreary office, a dull position, because she has to conduct long drawn prayers for the members who were dead. She considers it as very dull and boring job. So she says that already she has held different positions in the association. This time she is interested in becoming the regent, the highest position, but only if it is offered to her unanimously, by unanimous acclamation, that she is going to accept it. If daughter feel that I have demonstrated my capabilities and loyalty strongly enough that I should simply be named as regent without a vote being taken. If the daughter feels, if the members of the association, confederate daughters, feel that Cornelia Scott has demonstrated her capabilities when she held different positions in the organization before, if she is nominated to that post by unanimous acclamation, why then of course I would feel obliged to accept. I will accept that position only if it is offered unanimously. But if on the other hand the clique, and you know the ones I mean, is bold enough to propose someone else for the office, do you understand my position? So she says, she has said that there is a group of women in the association who are acting against her, who are moving against her. This group wants to keep Cornelia Scott out of any important office. There is a conspiracy. That's what she says. If that group, if that clique wants to or tries to propose another person, another candidate for this position, then she says that she wants to withdraw her candidature immediately. She is not interested in contesting for that position. Do you understand my position? In that eventuality, I prefer to bow out of the picture entirely. I want my candidature to be withdrawn immediately if there is another candidate. If that group of women who is acting against her proposes another candidate, then she wants her candidature to be withdrawn immediately. Is that quite understood? Do you understand my position? Then good, go back downstairs to the meeting, digest your chicken a la king, you enjoy your lunch, you enjoy chicken a la king. So this is about the conversation over the phone that we have seen. So after this, Cornelia and Grace are engaged in a conversation. Grace is asking about the election. Cornelia speaks about that group acting against her. Grace says that Cornelia should have gone to the meeting because she has great tension. She is expressing great tension about the outcome of the election, and she is very nervous. She is breathing so fast. But Cornelia is not ready to admit it. She says that she is not at all nervous. She has some tiredness because she could not sleep last night. Cornelia says that she could not sleep well last night because Grace Lancaster was walking about the house with that stitch in your side, with the pain in your side. Last night, Grace Lancaster was suffering from a pain in her side, and she was walking about the room many times. It was a great disturbance to Grace, so she couldn't sleep well last night. That's what she says. Then Grace explains that it's a muscular contraction, a muscular contraction, a muscle pain that comes from strain. Then Cornelia says that there is some other reason for this pain, this strain. Then Cornelia says that there is some other reason that is overlooked, ignored by Grace. Then Grace becomes perplexed, and she stands up to leave. Then Cornelia asks, where are you going? Grace says, upstairs. I am going upstairs. I remembered that I should take my drops of belladonna. Belladonna is a medicine. So I forgot to take the medicine. So I am going upstairs to take the medicine. Then Cornelia says, the medicine will do no good after eating. After eating, this medicine will not do any good. Cornelia says that Grace is trying to leave only because she wanted to avoid a conversation. She wanted to escape. But Grace says that that's not the reason. Cornelia, several times lately you have rushed away from me as if I suddenly threatened you with a knife. Cornelia says, I have noticed many times that you always try to run away from me, as if I have tried to threaten you with a knife. Grace says, I have been jumpy. Jumpy means excited, nervous. Cornelia, it is always when something is almost spoken between us. So I think you have noticed that the title of the play is Something Unspoken. Something unspoken. There is something unspoken between these two women. Something not expressed. The fact is that even though Grace Lancaster has been living with Cornelia in that house for 15 years, there is no emotional bonding between them. No emotional bonding between them. There is something that prevents them to prevents them from getting closer. So there is something unspoken between us. Grace says, I have no issues. I hate to see you agitated over the outcome of a silly club woman's election. There is no problem except that I always see you so agitated, so disturbed about the outcome of this election. Then Cornelia says that she is not at all nervous about the outcome of the election. Grace says, so Grace wants to play some music. Now would be a good time to play some records. But Cornelia Scott sees it as an attempt to avoid a conversation, avoid a direct conversation with her. And Cornelia says that Grace is always trying to avoid a conversation. Whenever Cornelia tried to speak out, to express her feeling, to express her emotions, then Grace has always tried to avoid it. Let me put a symphony on the machine. So let me play some music. Grace is asking, how about the Bach for piano and strings? Can I play Bach? Bach was a classical British music composer. Can I play Bach's piano and strings? The one we received for Christmas from Jesse and Gay. Cornelia sharply says no. She wants to talk to Grace, but Grace is trying to evade. So something very light and quiet, then the old French madrigals. Madrigal is a short love song. Cornelia says, anything to avoid a talk between us. You are always trying to avoid a talk between us. Anything to avoid a conversation, especially when the servant is not in the house. The servant is off today, so there is enough privacy. So Cornelia says, this is a good chance to express our emotions. I have something private to tell you. But Grace doesn't notice. Grace says, this is just the thing. So she is going to play a musical record. Landowska is playing a harpsichord selection. Landowska, a music composer, is playing a harpsichord selection. Harpsichord, it is a musical instrument, a stringed musical instrument. Harpsichordist, one who plays on harpsichord. Landowska is a harpsichordist. He plays on this harpsichord. The monograph is at the edge of the lighter area, that written part. So Cornelia stares grimly as Grace resumes her seat, then affectation of enchantment. So how it smooths things over. Grace pretends that she is going to enjoy music. She says, this is very a charming music. It smooths things over. It smooths things over. Music has the wonderful effect of smoothing things over. Then Cornelia does not like it. Cornelia does not like her behavior. She says that it is completely dishonest. Completely dishonest. She is acting in a completely dishonest manner. That is what Cornelia says. Then Grace is asking, music dishonest? Grace says, music hath charms to soothe the savage breast. It's a quotation from William Congreve. William Congreve's play The Morning Bride. The Morning Bride. A quotation from that play. Music hath charms to soothe the savage breast, the savage heart. Music has such a wonderful effect. Cornelia says, if the savage breast permits it. Cornelia says, Landowska is an artist of rare precision. So Grace says, after this, after Landowska, I will play the record of Edith Sitwell. Edith Sitwell was a famous British poet. She also sings a line from Edith Sitwell. Edith Sitwell's Facade. Edith Sitwell's Facade. It is a collection of poems, a collection of 37 poems. Facade. Then Cornelia says that Grace has not noticed something. She has failed to notice something. Grace is asking, what? Then Cornelia says, right under your nose. You have failed to notice something right under your nose. Grace is asking, you mean my flower? In the beginning, we have seen that Cornelia, we have seen that there is a flower vase on the mahogany table in front of the chair where Grace Lancaster is expected to sit. It is Cornelia Scott who has put that rose as a symbol of love. Rose is a symbol of love. Cornelia says, you haven't noticed this flower. Then Grace says that she has noticed it, but she didn't mention it. She didn't speak about it because her attention was diverted. Cornelia complains, you made no allusion to it. You made no reference to it. You didn't say anything about this rose flower that you have seen here. Grace, I would have, but you were so concerned over the meeting. My attention was diverted when I saw your anxiety, your nervousness about the meeting. Thus goes their conversation. Grace is asking, whom do I have to thank for this lovely rose? Whose gift is this lovely rose? Cornelia says, you will find 14 acres on your desk in the library when you go to take care of the correspondence. Cornelia says, you will find 14 flowers. You will find 14 more roses on your desk in the library. I have put on a desk, your desk in the library, 14 roses. Grace, 14 other roses. Cornelia, a total of 15. A total of 15. Grace, how wonderful. Why 15? Cornelia, how long have you been here, dearest? How long have you made this house a house of roses? Why does she offer 15 roses to Grace? It is because Grace has been living in that house for 15 years. You have been my secretary for 15 years. Grace, what a charming sort of way to observe the occasion. Cornelia says, first she considered pearl, to give pearls as a token of love. But later she changed her mind. She decided to give roses. Cornelia also remembers well the day when Grace came to the house. It was 15 years ago this very morning, on the 6th day of November. It was on the 6th day of November, 15 years ago, that you came to this house. Someone very sweet and gentle and silent. A shy little quiet little widow. Cornelia is describing the occasion. She describes it like a romantic lover. A shy little quiet little widow arrived for the first time at 7 Edgewater Drive. You came to my house. The season was autumn. It was an autumn season. I had been raking dead leaves over the rose bushes to protect them from frost when I heard footsteps on the gravel. When you came to the house, when I listened to the footsteps, I had been raking dead leaves over the rose bushes. I was in the garden doing some gardening work. I was putting dead leaves over the rose bushes to protect them from frost. Light, quick, delicate footsteps like spring coming in the middle of autumn. You have come to my house like a spring coming in the middle of autumn. Just like a spring coming in the middle of autumn, you came to my house. So her affection for Grace, her emotions, her love for Grace is very evident in her words. And sure enough, their spring was a little person so thin that light shone through her as if she were made of silk of a white parasol. Parasol is a light umbrella. So transparent, so thin, as if she were made of the silk of white parasol. Hearing this description, Grace becomes shy and she utters a short, startled laugh, a frightened laugh. It wounds Cornelia. Grace asks, Why did you laugh like that? Then Grace's reply is, it sounded like the first paragraph of a woman's magazine story. Your description sounds like the first paragraph of a woman's magazine story. Cornelia says, what a cutting remark. A remark that hurts. A rude remark, Cornelia says. Grace, I didn't mean it that way. Grace says, she is always a little embarrassed by sentiment. That's the reason for her behavior. Cornelia says, yes, frightened of anything that betrays some feeling. When someone shows any emotion, you become frightened. Grace, people who don't know you well, nearly all people we know would be astounded to hear you, Cornelia Scott, that grave and dignified lady, expressing herself in such a lyrical manner. Grace says that Cornelia is a grave and dignified lady, a very serious, very dignified. That's the impression that people have about Cornelia Scott. They will never expect that Cornelia Scott will speak in such a romantic manner. Cornelia says, if people think so, it's not my problem. People who don't know me well are everybody. Cornelia, Grace says, you must admit the sentiment is in like you. Grace says that the sentiment is not like you. To show such emotions, to speak in this manner does not suit you. Cornelia becomes angry. As much as you please, but it's evident to me that you are completely unstrung by your anxieties over the Confederate daughters. Grace is trying to change the subject, but Cornelia Scott sticks to it. Grace says, I will request your pardon if I have offended you. Cornelia says, I don't want apologies. I don't want any pardon. I don't want apologies. Grace says, thank you for the roses. Cornelia replies, I don't want your thanks. I don't want your thanks. I don't want your apologies. What I want is a return of affection. A little return of affection. That's what I want. Grace, you always will have that. Cornelia, and also a little outspokenness. You must talk openly to me. Outspokenness, I expect it also. Yes, outspokenness, if that's not too much to ask from such a proud young lady. Cornelia means that Grace is a proud young lady. Grace denies it. Grace says that she is not proud. Also, she is not young. Then, I have felt for a long time something unspoken between us. Cornelia says, don't you feel there is something unspoken between us? Have you felt that there is something unspoken between us? Grace, no, I don't. Cornelia, I have felt for a long time something unspoken between us. there is something, some detachment, lack of intimacy is between us. Grace, don't you think there is always something unspoken between two people? Grace asks, it is quite natural that there will be something unspoken between two people. There is always something unspoken between two people. Cornelia, I see no reason for it. Grace, but don't great many things exist without reasons? Grace says, there are many things which exist without reason. Then Cornelia says, don't turn this conversation into a philosophical discussion, a metaphysical discussion. Cornelia is very simple, is just that feel that there is something unspoken between us that ought to be spoken. We have to speak out. There is something unspoken between us. We have to speak it out. Continue, please. I will. So at this time, the phone rings, but Cornelia Scott does not allow Grace to attend it. Now stop that. Cornelia seizes the phone and slams it back into cradle. Stop that silly little female trick. Grace is in tears. Tears appear in her eyes. Cornelia describes it as a silly little female trick. Grace, you say there is something unspoken. Maybe there is. I don't know, but I do know some things are better left unspoken. Now Grace is talking. Grace says, I do know some things are better left unspoken. Also, I know that when silence between two people has gone on for a long time, it's like a wall that is impenetrable between them. There should be certain things which are left unspoken. That's what Grace says. Some things are better left unspoken. Also, I know that when a silence between two people, the silence that develops between two people has gone on for a long time. It's like a wall. A wall will develop between the individuals. When the silence between two people has gone on for a long time, she has been living with Cornelia Scott for 15 years. There is no emotional bonding between them. Grace is speaking, so there is silence between them. A lack of intimacy is between them, something that is expressed. So when the silence between two people goes on for a long time, it is like a wall that is impenetrable between them. A wall will be formed between them which is impenetrable. Nobody can break it. Maybe between us there is such a wall, one that is impenetrable, or maybe you can break it. I know I can't. I can't even attempt to. I am not able to break this wall. You may be able to break this wall, but I am not strong. You are the strong one of us. And surely you know, both of us have turned grey. We have become old. Both of us have turned grey. But even in the grey, there is a difference. It is not the same kind of grey. In that velvet dressing gown, you look like the Emperor Tiberius. Emperor Tiberius. He is the second Roman emperor. Grace says that Cornelia looks very majestic. You look like the emperor. You look like an emperor. In that dress, velvet dressing gown, you look like an emperor. In his imperial toga. Toga is an outer garment worn by the Romans. In his imperial toga, your hair and your eyes are both the color of iron. So there is something grand about you. Iron grey, invincible looking. You are unconquerable. Invincible looking, strong looking. People nearby are all somewhat frightened of you. People really fear you. They feel your force and they admire you for it. They come to you here for opinions of this or that. People come to you for your opinions on different matters. What plays are good on Broadway this season? People come to you to know your opinion about what plays are good, what plays are bad, what books are worth reading and what books are trash, worthless, and what records are valuable, what is the proper attitude toward bills in Congress. The people come to you for having discussion with you to know your opinion on important matters like the bills presented in Congress. Oh, you are a fountain of wisdom. So compared to you, I am nothing. You are a fountain of wisdom, and in addition to that, you have your wealth. In addition to all these qualities, you also have wealth. You have fortune. Your real estate holdings, your blue chip stocks, expensive shares, your bonds, mansion on Edgewater Drive, this large house, but me, a shy little secretary, your fabulous gardens. You have a wonderful garden where you deny permission even to the pilgrims. Cornelia says that she is happy now because she is happy to listen to Grace, to see that Grace is speaking. Because she has been silent. There was no such conversation between them in the past. So she is happy to see Grace speaking. But Grace says, I am very different, also turning grey. I cannot be compared to you. You are superior to me. I am nothing. Even in the kind of grey, there is difference. My grey is different, not iron like yours, not imperial Cornelia, but grey, the color of a cobweb. If your grey is iron, mine it is the color of a cobweb. That's what she says. It is something white getting soiled, getting dirty. That being the case, that being the difference between our two kinds of grey, yours and mine, you mustn't expect me to give bold answers to questions that make the house shake with silence. We are not equal. You are far superior to me. So you should not expect me to give bold answers to questions that remain unsolved for a long time. To speak out things that are 15 years unspoken, that long a time can make a silence a wall that nothing less than dynamite could break through. A wall has formed between us. A wall. Nothing less than dynamite could break it. I am not strong enough, bold enough, I am not. So at this time, the expected call from Esmeralda Hawkins, her friend in the Confederate Daughters. She is calling. Cornelia attends to the phone. What's it, Esmeralda? What are you saying? Is the room full of women? Such a babble of voices. It's quite noisy. Cornelia says, is that a room full of women? What are you trying to tell me? I can't hear a word that you are saying. It sounds like the 4th of July. 4th of July is the Independence Day of the United States. Hearing the noise in that room, it sounds like the 4th of July, a great celebration. Now try once more with your mouth closer. Esmeralda Hawkins now speaks. She is asking whether Cornelia is ready to hold the position of vice regent. Esmeralda is saying it is difficult to offer the position of the regent. That's the situation here. Will you accept the position of vice regent? Hearing this, Cornelia Scott becomes angry. What's going on? Are there some fresh defections? How does it look? Why did you call me again before the vote? Louder and cup your mouth to the phone in case they are eavesdropping. People may try to eavesdrop. Listen this talk secretly. Oh, Mrs. Colby, of course. Who told you? Who made such a suggestion that I should hold a vice regent? It is like insulting me. That's the attitude of Cornelia Scott. After Esmeralda, after she hangs up, there is again a conversation between Grace and Cornelia. Grace asks, is the election over? Cornelia says, no, there is a 5-minute recess before the election begins. An interval of 5 minutes. So Cornelia doesn't like this question asked by Esmeralda Hawkins, whether she will accept the position of the vice regent. So they are talking. They continue the conversation. Cornelia says, when you first came to this house, do you know, I didn't expect you. Cornelia says, when Grace Lancaster came to that house first, I didn't expect you. Grace says, I came to this house because you invited me. Cornelia, we hardly knew each other. Grace, we had met the summer before when Ralph. Grace remembers when they first met. At that time her husband was alive, Ralph, but he was suffering from an illness. Soon he died. He was a summer instructor at Sewens. Cornelia also remembers. Cornelia says that she sometimes felt sympathy for Grace, thinking about her fate, that her husband is ill. You seem to understand how badly I needed to withdraw for a while from all. So Grace says, you wrote me such a sweet letter. When Grace's husband died, when she felt very lonely, it is at that time that Cornelia writes a letter to Grace. You wrote to me such a sweet letter saying how lonely you were since the loss of your mother. So in that letter, Cornelia had said that she also felt very lonely after the death of her mother, and she asked Grace to come and live with her. You seem to understand how badly I needed to withdraw for a while. Grace says, I also wanted to withdraw from everyone. First I hesitated to come. When Cornelia Scott invited me to her house, I first hesitated. Then I received another letter from Cornelia Scott. I didn't until you wrote to me so she did not take a decision. She took a decision to go and live with Cornelia Scott when she received the second letter from her. Cornelia says, I felt that you wanted urging. I felt you wanted urging. I felt that somebody should urge you. So I wrote the second letter. I was really wanted. So Grace says, I really came to this house, came to stay only for a few weeks. It was never my intention to stay here for 15 years. Now 15 years have passed. But I really came to this house to spend some weeks. But Cornelia says that actually she wanted her permanently in the house. How desperately I wanted to keep you here forever. Grace, I did see that. Cornelia, at that time phone rings again. Cornelia snatches the phone finally. Cornelia Scott speaking. Oh, it's you, Esmeralda. Esmeralda is again calling from the meeting of the Confederate daughters. It is to inform her the news that Cornelia has not been selected for this position, but another woman has been elected. A Mrs. Hornsby. A woman named Mrs. Hornsby has been elected. Hearing this, Cornelia becomes very much furious, very angry. Less than a year, there is a dark horse for you. Less than a year in the charter. This Mrs. Hornsby is in the organization only less than a year. She did not have much experience in the meeting, in the association. Still, she has been elected. Cornelia is very angry to hear this. Did you nominate me? Oh, I see, but I told you to withdraw my name. So she bursts into emotion. I have too much already, I am going into the daughters of the barons of Runnymede. Cornelia Scott says that she is going to resign from the association. She felt insulted. I am going into the daughters of the barons. So I will go to some other chapter. I am going to resign from this chapter of Confederate daughters. I will go to the daughters of the barons of Runnymede. I have offer from many associations. There is no need to stick to the Confederate daughters. Really, I am very busy. I have many offers from daughters of the barons of Runnymede. It has been established. I have a direct line to the Earl. Also, I have direct connections with the Earl. A position like a Lord. No, it has been straightened out, a clear line is established, and then of course I am also eligible for the Colonial Dames. Colonial Dames also is a patriotic organization of women. I will go and join Colonial Daughters for the Huguenot Society, and what with all my other activities and so forth. Why so I couldn't have possibly have taken. Cornelia Scott is very much angry, and she says, even if you have offered me the position of the regent, I am not going to accept it. I would not have accepted the position of the regent even if it is offered unanimously to me, because I am so busy. I get offers from many organizations, from the Colonial Dames, from the daughters of the barons, and I have a direct connection with the Earl. I am going to resign from the local chapter. Yes, I am. My secretary is sitting right here by me. She has her pencil, her notebook. I am going to dictate my letter of resignation from the local chapter the moment that I hang up on this conversation. The moment I stop this conversation, the moment I hang up this phone, I will ask my secretary to write my resignation letter. I am going to resign from this chapter of Confederate Daughters. Nothing succeeds like mediocrity. So people who are capable do not succeed. Only mediocrity, mediocre, average people succeed. Thanks and goodbye, Esmeralda. Grace. Then Grace asks, are you going to resign? Cornelia, yes, notebook and pencil, I have to dictate a letter. Grace leaves the table just at the edge of the lighted area. So Grace goes to the library for the notebook pencil to dictate the letter, to write the letter of resignation. At this time, Grace notices the 14 roses that Cornelia Scott has put on a desk in the library, and she exclaims, "What lovely roses, one for every year." There are 15 roses. 15 roses, each rose represents 1 year. She has been in the house for 15 years, one for every year. So here the play, the one act play ends. It is a great play, great one act play by Tennessee Williams. Tennessee Williams' most famous play is A Streetcar Named Desire. A streetcar named Desire. He has come to the limelight with the play Glass Menagerie. Glass Menagerie. He became famous with this play. He also has written poetry collections. In the Winter of Cities, a poetry collection. Another poetry collection is Androgyne Mon Amour. Androgyne Mon Amour. He has also published a memoir. So I have told you about the title, Something Unspoken. The frustrated condition, isolation of women, isolated plight of women is the often a recurrent theme of Tennessee Williams plays. So the title Something Unspoken is very significant. It suggests the lack of emotional bonding between these two characters. Okay, thank you.